Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am bringing you a review of Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. So first things first, I received this proof copy of this book from the publisher in exchange for an honest review that doesn't impact my opinion on the book whatsoever. I'm actually going to put this proof copy down for the rest of the review and put the lovely cover up here because it's worth it, because it's beautiful. Also, this is going to be a spoiler-free review, but I am going to be going into some of sort of like the characters and a little bit of the plot, and also give some content warnings that I think are really necessary at the end of this review. So if you don't want to know anything about this book going in, you should probably read it first and then come back here. We'll see you later. So in Winter's Orbit, we follow two characters who are basically forced into an arranged marriage in order to save the Empire, which is absolutely amazing. So our two main characters are Kim, who is the least favorite grandchild of the Emperor. He's kind of like early days Prince Harry when he was running around Vegas in the nude and having paparazzi take lots of pictures of him. He's kind of in that stage of his life at the moment. He's very, very kind-hearted. He's very big-hearted. He's basically a golden retriever, but he's a little bit bumbling. He's kind of a fuck-up. He's just a little bit of a disaster. So he ends up getting sort of with like 10 minutes notice being told that he is going to be married off to a representative of one of the vassal planets of the Iskat Empire. So this man, Janin, was previously married and has just been widowed because his husband was in a basically like a shuttlecraft accident. So he has died in this horrible accident, and now they're gonna get married, and Kim is very much like, this poor man probably doesn't want this. He's being forced into it because of these treaty agreements. Basically, they have to show that their empire is stable in order to sort of have this treaty with a wider empire. It prevents like trade wars and stuff like that. So he's like, he doesn't want to be in this marriage with me. This is terrible. So I'm going to kind of like walk on eggshells around him. Meanwhile, we have Janin, who is very much the opposite of Kim. He is very sort of like stiff, does his duty, comes off as kind of cold, but he has this sort of darker past, and his sort of previous experiences are coloring his experiences in this brand new marriage that he has found himself in that he really had no say in. So the first half of this book is very much it's very much light on plot, but we get a lot of that character development. We get both Kim and Janin's points of view, and they sort of like go back and forth as they go from being complete strangers to married, and then to a married couple that has to show that they are getting on, totally willing and happy to do this, save the Empire. I can imagine what that kind of pressure does to a person. So this first half is really about unfolding their characters. Janin definitely gets much more sort of development because Kim is sort of hard on his sleeve, as I said, golden retriever type, and Janin has a little bit more sort of depth and complexity to his character. Not in, that's, you know, shading Kim's character in any way. He's just a little bit more of a complex person. And so after they sort of reach a certain point, then the plot really gets kicked into gear, and we're doing, you know, political maneuvering, conspiracies, like crimes being covered up by, you know, certain officials, and it's amazing. So this book is definitely sci-fi romance, and the romance is definitely the selling point of the book. I think that if you're going to pick this up, you're not necessarily looking for like a rollicking space opera, you're looking for that romance, and I have to say the romance is wonderful. I really, really, really loved watching these two, again, go from kind of complete strangers to being married, and then having the fate of the Empire rest on their shoulders, with all of the complications that come from baggage, whether it's past relationships, family relationships, sort of relationships with the people they are meant to be kind of like governing over. I just thought that it was really, really fabulously done. There's lots of layers and complexity to this romance, and it was just also so sweet, and I loved it. And I loved the two of them, and I just like, it was really nice. I'm usually not like a kind of person, but like this book made me a little bit, and it was really lovely. So watching that kind of romance develop in the first half I thought was really smart, because when the stakes rise at the end and sort of in the second half of the book, I think that is much more impactful. So I think that in a way, her doing the light plot and then heavier plot, get the development out of the way, and then we get the plot, was really, really smart actually. I wasn't 100% sure if that was gonna work initially, because in the first 50 pages or so, I was just kind of like, what are we doing? But it ended up being really, really good. So if you're having a bit of an issue kind of like wondering where the plot is of this book, I would definitely recommend sticking with it a little bit. So in terms of the plot of the book, she lays out a lot of sort of little threads in the beginning as we're getting some of that character development that get picked up in a really, really smart way toward the end. I found that the plot was definitely simple enough that she could focus on the relationship between these two characters, because that's definitely the main point of the book, but also it was complex enough for someone who is generally like a hard sci-fi reader to really, really enjoy this. So I thought that Winter's Orbit was just a really, really fabulous book. If you're not sold by two princes have to get married in an arranged marriage and the fate of the empire rests on their shoulders, I don't really know what else to say. So this is a pretty brief review because I think that if this is the kind of book that you will like, it kind of sells itself to you. But I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a really, really fabulous book. I can understand why myself and so many other people were so excited for it, and I'm really, really happy that I read it. I took a little bit of time at the beginning to sort of get into the story, but then after that, I read like the last 250 pages in one sitting, and I stayed up well past my bedtime, which I think is a great endorsement. Really quickly, before we go, I did want to say that there are some very serious content warnings for this book. If you don't want to know about content warnings, that's totally cool. Go ahead and skip ahead a little bit. We're basically at the end of the video anyway. But if you do want to know about content warnings, I would say that if sort of on-page domestic violence is something that you really struggle with, I would go into this with caution, because there is a lot of domestic violence that is referred to but also seen on the page, and there's also PTSD related to that domestic violence. So just a heads up, my good friend Asha, who's a book blogger, read this before me, and she was really surprised by the fact that people didn't really seem to be mentioning the domestic violence aspect of it, and she's totally right. So I wanted to make sure that people kind of knew what they were getting themselves into, because while it is a really, really sweet and lovely story, it does have some darker aspects to it. So that is it for my review of Winter's Orbit. I hope that I've convinced you to pick this up, because this is definitely, I think, going to be a strong candidate for one of my top books of the year. It's just refreshing, especially in the sci-fi genre, where I don't feel like you get all that much romance necessarily, and it was just a really, really lovely read. I am so excited to see what she comes out with next. In the comments below, I would love to hear if you have read this book, what you thought of it, if you are excited for this, if this is in your TBR, definitely let me know. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.